Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to Ask the Expert. We're super excited. I'm going to share our screen in a minute to kind of tell you the topic that we're doing today. So if I can ask my co-pilot here, Sana, if you can just share the flyer. Yeah, so we can kind of show off what we're about to talk about today. I'm very, very excited to bring back one of my okay, so I'll get myself in trouble for saying one of my favorite guests in that way. Um so we'll share that in a minute. Um, so today I'm very excited to have one of our team members, Mr. Scott Cohen. Scott and I have been privileged to have gone to our sister daughter program in Ghana, Haven International, over was it part of May? Yeah, in May.
Yeah,
We're privileged to go to Ghana and work with the team there. And prior to that, Scott and I have both of had an opportunity to be a couple of committees together. So I'll definitely have him do the bit of intro because we're always up to something, one thing or the other. He serves on numerous board. Scott Cohen is a parent with of two children who are adults now, really. So he's going to be talking about something that he's walked the journey himself. But what I appreciate about is the desire to consistently be a blessing to many people who are on the journey, in terms of providing supports and services and learning to share what he's learned. And so earlier this year, as I started to say, we had an opportunity to bring some training and development for teachers in Ghana. And I was just very grateful that he could be a part of that. And of course, when I was thinking about this as the expert topic that I wanted to do today, I looked into my network and I'm like, there's one person that I know for sure, A, will make the time, and two, is committed and will do justice to the topic in so many ways. So if you're joining us and you're unfamiliar, my name is Dr. Genevieve Kumapule, and I'm the founder and executive director of My Goal, an organization that exists to support families facing autism and other intellectual disabilities throughout their lifespan. As a parent walking the journey myself, there are sometimes questions that I have and topics that I learn about, and I feel that getting somebody else to speak to it and share their knowledge will be super helpful to others. So if you're watching or logging on today, welcome, welcome, welcome. I pray that what we're sharing today is definitely something that you think will be helpful to you. And if you're watching and you know someone that can benefit for it, please do share it because we want people to benefit from the information that we share. So what this work that we do is really out of part of our mission is to ensure that people get connected and people receive resources, and resources is inclusive of education and training. So this is part of what the organization, as it's an entity, does. So today's topic is called Planning for Independent Living and Employment. And our presenter is Mr. Scott Cohen. So Scott, I'm gonna bring you on, and if you wanna just kind of share a little bit about your backstory, and then we'll open it up for the presentation and then Q&A afterwards.
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate being back here. It's always a joy for me to come back into this space and help where I can with those who are wherever they may be on their particular journeys. It's really vitally important that we share our stories and that we connect with one another and ensure that we all connect on different levels as I look here to just see how to get this into slideshow. Here we go. Hopefully this will work. Excellent. So there's a lot to cover in this topic, of course, as there is with everything. So if I either don't touch on something or there's something that your viewers wish to chat about or discuss, we can certainly go off on a tangent and deviate into conversations that are more relevant, pertinent for those that are joining us. So, um, whoever's minding the chat, if you want to just let me know if there's any other questions or things that people are looking for in the way of conversation, I'm happy to entertain that as we go along. So, with that said, please feel free to interject at any point and ask questions. This is meant to be interactive. There is, as I said, so many different topics in this space to touch upon. So I may not hit the particular aspect that is relevant to you, but I would love to do so if we're so inclined. So just as Genevieve had shared before, I'm married. I've been married to my wife for 30 years. We've actually been together close to 40 years at this point. We have two children, one who is 28 years old and neurotypical. The other is turning 24 this year and has lived with an intellectual disability since birth. We didn't know that there was any disability with our child until probably about year two, when we started to notice some differences between what we had experienced with our older child, um, and started to have our younger child assessed in different ways. From a professional perspective, the first half of my career, I worked in corporate America in multiple Fortune 500 companies and had the pleasure to experience different working conditions and environments both in New Jersey and New York. And the second half of my career, which I'm still in, has been in public education and most recently as an administrator for a large public high school in New Jersey. So during the transition, both as having a child with a disability and eventually moving into education, I had the pleasure and opportunity to start a special education parents association group, the first CPAG at the high school where both of my children attended. And that afforded me an opportunity to look through a lens of education before being at education and working in the school district that I'm currently in from a parent's lens and providing input and guidance to um, the professionals within the school district. As a volunteer, I've been volunteering my entire life across multiple platforms and spaces, a lot of nonprofit experience in housing, disability rights, and social justice. Those have been my three areas of focus for most of my volunteer work. Currently serving as the vice chair of the Regional Family Planning Council, number 5, which serves Hunterdon, Middlesex, and Mercer counties, and also on the Robert Wood Johnson Pediatric Medical School's Bog Center for People with Disabilities, where Genevieve and I have had the pleasure to work together in both of those capacities over many years. So that's been a true reward for me. Um, so with that said, today's session is focused on independent living and employment. Uh, Independent living has a lot of connotations for a lot of different people. Depending on where your child is and where you envision your child going, or the family members in your family that have disabilities, I want you just to pause. And if anybody on the call is interested to share what comes to mind when you hear the words independent living, what do you think of when you hear those words? What does independent living mean to you? What are some of the elements that you think of when you hear the words independent living? If anybody wants to unmute and share, that would be great. Again, if anybody's online and wants to put something in the chat, or even if you're online and want to put something in the chat, that would be great.
I'll say something, and
Sure.
and others opportunity too. I mean, when I think of independent living, I'm thinking living a really fulfilling life, right? Where you're, and it regardless of abilities, right? It's really being able to live a life that you can do things that you want to do when you want to do it. Or I can say, I can do what I want to do when I want to do it, and experiencing the fulfillment in it without any limitation.
That's awesome. And when you think about that, it's really truly all encompassing. I think if we think about ourselves and what we have accomplished individually in achieving what we envisioned for ourselves when we became independent, leaving our parents and guardians or our family's nest, if you will, at a young age, whatever time that was for you, we have gone on our own journey to design and create the space of which we choose to hopefully live and not only live but also work. We're talking about employment today. Employment is certainly one of those things that enables independent living, right? Because financially we have to somehow sustain ourselves, and what that looks like and how that comes to be is going to be different for everybody depending on circumstance. It could be somebody who needs to work multiple jobs in order to raise a family. It could be a business owner. It could be employed by a corporation. It could be devoting your life to a cause. Employment looks very different for everybody, as does independent living. And so hopefully we're able to get ourselves to a place where we can choose to live the way in which we wish to. And if we can't necessarily, for whatever reasons and barriers we have, at least be able to think about the approach of what we would like to see for ourselves and try to work towards that end. And sometimes we'll get there, and sometimes life will take us down different journeys that we didn't anticipate and put us into a new space. But the idea is that you're really thinking about what do you want for yourself in terms of a life? What are the aspects of the life you're leading that you wish to either develop further or grow? And that can be across so many different spaces, right? But it's this notion of what can be. It may be that we're stuck at the moment because of circumstance, but what would I like it to be? And that independent living in embodies the components that I have at the bottom of the slide and many more. It's about employment. It's about having a roof over your head and housing. It's about what level of socialization are you looking for? What types of transportation needs do you have? For many of us who are not differently abled, we don't think twice about getting into our car to go to a grocery store for food. But if you're in a situation, or maybe even public transportation, but if you're in a situation, depending on the disability, you too should be able to have the means to do what it is you need to do in order to get to the independent living scenario that you conjure up for yourself, that you envision for yourself. So these are all elements, and there are others as well, but these I would say are some of the top items in order to at a very basic level be able to sustain an independent life. Any questions or comments on or thoughts on that? Anybody have any other thoughts that we should be incorporating in the list?
There
Okay.
was there was a comment on Facebook about the earlier question about what comes
Oh,
to mind when, you think of independent living. I think the individual indicated that living on your own or living with support is the
yeah.
ideal definition of that.
Yeah, and that's excellent because all of us, even those of us on the call, we all have support needs. Support needs is not unique to a person with disability, and everything we're talking about today is not unique to a person with disability. For example, when I have a plumbing issue in my house, I don't know how to address plumbing problems. I'm not a plumber. I don't have those trade skills. And so I typically need to outsource that to support the infrastructure of my home. And so who do I turn to find a plumber? It may be the internet. It may be my friend's network that I have. It may be word of mouth. It may be a host of different ways that I land to find a plumber. And that's support, right? Support doesn't necessarily have to look a certain way, although depending on the child with a disability or the person in your family with a disability, it may. There may be certain medical issues that your child has that do need a specific licensed professional to assist you. But in a way, not necessarily different than if you're an elderly individual who also needs home health aid care worker to assist with their daily living as well. So while the uniqueness of the position you're in with your child may appear to be um, an extra charge for you as a parent, it isn't necessarily per se that dramatically different than supports that other people may need, right? So great. I'm glad that person brought that up in Facebook. Thank you for that. So a quick quiz question. At what age can your child begin to take advantage of state services for employment? Does anybody know the answer to that question? Because employment is really the entry point for so many, not all, not everybody is capable of employment depending on circumstance, but the majority of people are able to do some level of work. So at what age do you think for your child with a disability, they would be able to start getting support for employment if they're unable to do that on their own?
18, maybe.
18? Okay. Good call. Any other guesses?
14.
14, 18? Okay. Yeah, correct. So 14 is the correct answer.
Yeah.
And that I wish there was a prize to give you, but the prize is you get to participate in this wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
What made you say 14? I'm just curious.
I heard about it somewhere. I think 'cause I work in ABA center, so I think they were talking about it. That's how I find out. Yes.
Outstanding. So
Thank you.
14, at age 14, your child is actually eligible for support. And the way in which you get support is through what we call CSOC, a lot of acronyms, the New Jersey System of Care. So you can register your child, and in certain instances, you can qualify earlier, but the vast majority of people will qualify at 14. And you would go online to their website and you can apply to have your child entered into the New Jersey System of Care. And that system of care will open the doors for a host of services that can start to support your child, including something called Perform Care, which can provide respite care and support with camps during the summer. But more importantly, when we're talking about employment, we're talking about the use of the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, or DVRS. I saw a hand go up. Did somebody have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. So if you need, so if your child is starting at 14, do you, because I have children already on Perform Care, do you still need to register for this, or once they turn 14 is when you reach out?
Yeah, so you can reach out ahead of time, but you would typically enroll them at age 14. So if you're saying they're already getting Perform Care, so then they're already in the child system of care. If you're getting Perform Care, you're in good shape.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Scott, I have a question.
Yeah.
So just because maybe some people watching from out of state. So
Yep.
in this particular instance, you're referring to New Jersey. Would you know by chance if there's a federal component to this that other states may have something similar?
Most states will have something similar, but it's best to reach out to your state office of
Mhm.
disability, your state disability office, to get specific things for your state. They are going to look different from state to state. And so that's why, yes, I specifically in here, state New Jersey. I'm not certain about federal programs necessarily that could provide that support, but it's best to go to your state office of disability and inquire with them as to what services would be available.
Okay. And then the other acronym that you just mentioned was DVRS, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. Is that connected to okay, sorry, went ahead of you.
Yep. Yeah, that's all right. I had paused because a question popped up. So yes,
Perfect. Okay. All right, go ahead.
so the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, DVRS, as you can see from the bullets below, I'm not going to read them. You can read them. But basically, any child who has a disability, once you're enrolled with the Child System of Care, again, this is New Jersey specific, then you would be able to get the services from DVRS. The great thing about DVRS is that they provide coaching services. So if your child, and they'll help your child find employment. So it's really beneficial to reach out to them. And that's a matter of making a call to your local division of DVRS site in Hunterdon County, for example, where I live. The office is in Somerset, New Jersey, but they service Hunterdon and Somerset counties. So you can just go on the internet, do some research, find out if you're in New Jersey again, where your Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services is located. They will do an intake with you over the phone and start the initiation process then to have you go through the process. And it's been a while since my child's gone through it. Again, my youngest is 24 this year, so it's been about 10 years. So the process may have changed a bit, especially since we've gone through COVID, and a lot of things changed through COVID. So best to reach out to them, find out exactly what the new steps are. When my child went through it, it required us meeting with them in person. They may have moved to a much more automated system today. Hopefully not. Hopefully they still meet with your child. And that DVRS is really support for your child between the ages of 14 and 21. And we'll talk about what happens at 21 in a minute. Oh, I think I might have meant to mention one other thing with this. So when you go through this process, once you're enrolled in the New Jersey, again, this is New Jersey specific, New Jersey Child System of Care, if you haven't done that, and your child is somewhere between 14 and 21, I strongly urge you to go and do that. And the reason is when we get to the next slide that you just saw, and I'll bring it up in a moment, once your child turns 21, you're going to switch from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services to the Division of Developmental Disability. And when that switch occurs, you're going to be taken out of New Jersey System of Care and moved directly into DDD. So if you're registered with New Jersey System of Care, the switch, the transition from that to DDD will be much smoother. There'll be less that you'll need to do. There's something called a short form and a long form to enter that service agreement with DDD. You'll be doing the short form, which will be much simpler for you to make the migration from 14 to 21 to over 21. Now, keep in mind, while your child is in between the ages of 14 and 21, they are still in the public school system and still entitled. We go from entitlement to what we call eligibility. So while they're in public education, which they can participate in through their 21st birthday, they are entitled to services that come with from the state through the school. That's a really important thing to understand, because once your child gets to 21, the entitlements and the things you've been receiving from through your school will end. So there are things to think about as you think about where do you want your child to be when it comes to independent living, which includes financial sustainability, right? Because once they graduate high school, the aim for most of us is that they're going to be independent. We're going to look for them to be independent, living on their own, and hopefully have some level of employment with that. Now, in order to do that, they're going to need to do a few things. So we're going to switch over now from ages 14 to 21 to once they turn 21 and older. Oh, before they turn 21, you're going to have to think about what kind of supports they're going to need. If you think you're going to want them to continue receiving state support in New Jersey, it's going to be vitally important that when they're between the ages of 14 to 16, really, you really should think about the financial resources that they have at their disposal. If you have them set up with any kind of financial supports, there's some kind of, I don't know, you have a bank account set up for them to have money coming in from a relative or something of that nature. You're going to want to get rid of all that, because when they turn 21, well, actually, when they turn 18, you can apply for Social Security for your child with developmental disabilities. When you apply for Social Security, they are going to do a 3 to 5 year look back on your child's finances. If your child had more than $2,000 any financial resources, they will not be eligible for Social Security. So it's vitally important to look at the financial structures that you may have in place for your child. And that can include even things like wills, that somebody's leaving behind money for your child if they pass away. Anything, any assets that are potentially tied to your child, you should be looking to offload well in advance, because Social Security is imperative in order to get state funding through DDD in New Jersey. Why do you need Social Security if your child turns 21 and you're looking for state aid? The reason is that in order to get state funding through DDD for your child, they must have Medicare. And the only way you can get Medicare, the primary way you can get Medicare through New Jersey is by getting Social Security. So it's sort of a three-dot connected process. You need Social Security to get Medicare, and you need Medicare to get DDD services. So if you back it up from the back end of getting state funding, you must get Social Security in order to get state funding for your child. You can't get state funding or you can't get Social Security if you have too many assets tagged to your child. And that application can begin at the age of 18. What's involved with that is you would contact the Social Security office, and this is true in any state, doesn't matter. You would contact the Social Security office and you would make an application. The application process is not necessarily straightforward, and at least in the state of New Jersey, it's not uncommon for you to get rejected 1 or 2 times through an appeal process before you get your Social Security. Now, in some instances, as I did with my child, I was able to get it the first time out of the gate. It was really almost unheard of in terms of the turnaround time to obtain it. The reason was I ensured that I had all of the documentation that Social Security needed, and I took a day off of work, a vacation day, and I went down to Trenton to the Social Security office on the day I had um, my consult with Social Security, and I spent the day in Trenton working with them to go through all the paperwork, which I understand a lot of people cannot afford to take that kind of time. What I'm suggesting through that, though, is if you are able to, and you spend that upfront work and you're able to take a day to go to Trenton or make a visit to whatever office they suggest you go to, and sometimes that's a different office than Trenton in New Jersey, sometimes being in person can make all the difference because they may have questions that explaining to them the answer is sometimes more helpful than just saying it over the phone when they're trying to go through all the paperwork you've turned in and trying to figure the pieces of the puzzle out. So I don't want to get too much in the weeds. I'm getting a little too deep, but I want you to understand that the financial piece, when I was going through my journey, I really didn't understand this piece well at all. I went to so many meetings to get clarity on exactly what I would need to do when my child was about 14 or 15 to understand what I needed to do in preparation for when they were going to transition out of high school. And the earlier you do this and understand what's required and set yourself up, the easier it's going to be for you when you get to the point where your child is 21. And that's the turning point where we're hoping that they will become more independent and start to make the pivot to being on their own. So I'll pause there to see if any questions been coming in about that, any confusion, clarity I can answer on that.
Yes, question.
Yep.
Sorry, my name is Patricia. If
Nice to
your
meet you.
Same here. If your child is on Social Security right now, and is transitioning to adulthood, is there anything that need to be presented? I don't know how it
No, you'll
works.
be fine. You'll be
Okay.
fine. Should be fine. You're in a good place with that. And there are eligibility rationales for some children to get Social Security before 18. So if that's the case, you're all set to go. And
Oh,
automatically, once you get Social Security, your child's eligible for Medicare. So that's the pairing that's needed in order to get the funding from the state after 21. So what happens at 21?
yes.
Uh, well, two things I want to share. One is if your child's in high school, you must, if you have an IEP, which you should if your child has a disability, you must indicate to your child study team member, your case worker, that you do, if you choose that you do not want your child to take the diploma at the age in which they're eligible to graduate. Here's the reason, and I'll give my daughter as an example. My daughter went to school through the age of 21. She graduated with her class, her regular class, that graduated in 19, which was her true graduation year, but she stayed 2 more years. As soon as you take hold of the diploma, you will no longer be eligible or entitled to the services that the state has, and you will not be eligible for state funding until 21. So you will have a gap from years 18 or 19 to 21 when your child turns 21. So you must specify with your case manager that if you choose, it's not a mandate, but if you choose and you want to make sure your child still gets the support they need, you must explicitly state to them and have it documented in the IEP that your child does not wish to take hold of their diploma at their true eligible graduation year. So make sure if that's the case, you note that. I can't speak to other states, but I would presume, and again, it's a presumption because I don't know, but other states, if you have the same kind of funding model, that you check in and see if that's the case in your state.
Okay. Sorry for the question again. So because my son has IEP right now. So you tell me that the support that he having that is getting in a school, let's say if it's transitioning to college, he still can get that support in college. I'm just kind of confused.
Well, if you're talking about state funding, yes. If you're talking about will they get the same IEP level of support at college, the answer is no. So once your child goes to college, there are offices of, forgot exactly what they're called. It'll come to me in a minute. I'm drawing a blank. But most colleges will have an office that you can go to indicate that your child does have a learning disability, and
Okay.
they will provide some levels of support. For example, most colleges will give you, for example, extended time on testing,
Okay.
those basic functional things, but they will not provide the level of like occupational therapy or uh, uh, reading assistance that you would have gotten in a public education system. But you should check with the school. And there are a lot of schools right now. I think there's over 300 colleges in the United States who are geared specifically with students with disabilities. So if you attend one of those, for example, and I'm not promoting any school at all because what's right for one child isn't right for another. But for example, there's Landmark College up in New England that specifically focuses on students with different disability needs. In New Jersey, RVCC, Raritan Valley Community College, and a lot of the community colleges have partnerships with Hunterdon and ARC to have special programming that allows students to participate. It doesn't necessarily lead to a degree, but they can also go through a degree program and get different levels of support. But it's not going to be the same as the IEP. However, that said, it does not impede your ability to get DDD services. So when you apply for DDD, again, if you have already been in Perform Care, making that switch is fairly smooth. If you haven't, you can apply to DDD starting at 18, but the application won't be approved for them until they're 21. Part of that process is you must take what's called a New Jersey Comprehensive Assessment Test, or NJCAT. That, don't fear that test. It's not a test in the sense of, like an SAT or a PSAT test. It's more of a series of questions online that you complete that give some specificity about your child's issues and needs. Here's the catch with the NJCAT. This is really important to note. When you go online to complete the New Jersey CAT, answer the questions not as the parent who loves their child and envisions them doing all these wonderful things, but answer the questions as if you took your child to, I don't know, California, and you dropped them off at a hotel and you drove home and left them there. When you answer the questions that way and you put yourself in that mindset, you'll answer the questions much differently than if you think about what they do day to day in your home environment. And here's an example. When I had to fill out the NJCAT, one of the questions said something about your child's ability to um, take a bath. What level can they take a bath? Well, my daughter knew how to turn the water on, but she didn't know how to gauge the temperature, like what's too hot, what's too cold. So, sure, I'd like to say that my child was able to take a bath, but at the same token, there's a skill set that's not able to be achieved. Or is your child able to brush their teeth? Well, sure, they know they will brush their teeth, but they'll only brush their teeth if I prompt them and say, "Hey, did you brush your teeth?" "Oh yeah, I forgot to brush my teeth." Then my child could go and brush their teeth. But that prompting is a necessary thing to consider when answering the questions. And why is that important? That's important because how you answer the questions will ultimately drive the dollar amount that the state will allocate to you. And I'm not going to get too in the weeds with the different levels of funding for that, but it will affect the level of funding that you get from the state. The good news is once you get that funding, it's locked in right now for life. And unless your child has something dramatic happen to them that causes their ability to get worse, then you don't need to ever reapply. So if conditions get worse, then you have the option of doing a reapplication and trying to get the different, trying to bump up the dollars that you would need or potentially be eligible for from the state. Again, I can't speak to other states about what type of testing they may have or what the process would be, but in New Jersey, that's one thing you will need to complete. Once you complete that, DDD will get back to you with what tier level you are. There are different tier levels, and each tier level comes with a different dollar amount. So I'll pause there and try to reconnect. How does all of this connect to this notion of independent living and employment, which is the topic of today's conversation? Well, it connects because that budget that your child will receive, for example, my own daughter, part of her budget gives money for rideshare services. So my daughter has been trying to pass the driver's test and has not been able to do so far. But it does not mean she has to be limited on her ability to get places, whether it's a job, a movie, seeing friends, going to the zoo, doing things that we would hope that any one of us would want to be able to be doing as in regards to independent living. So part of that money is allocated for Uber and Lyft. So she can take an Uber or Lyft and go visit her cousin in New York City or go to the shore to the beach for the day or do things that all of us take for granted that we have access to a vehicle or we can call a cab or we can take public transportation. And that's really vitally important. One of the elements I expressed earlier for independent living success is transportation. How do you get around? Again, I'm in Hunterdon County. There is no New Jersey Transit in Hunterdon County. So to get to a train, to get a bus, to get any kind of New Jersey access transportation, it doesn't exist. So the only transportation available in Hunterdon is our local county transportation system, which doesn't go terribly far. So if my daughter wanted to go, say, to New Brunswick to see a play, using what she could do with public transportation is she'd have to take our Hunterdon County bus to Somerset County's bus system, Somerset County's system to the train to New Brunswick. Now, just envision the time that would take if you wanted to see a play at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She'd probably have to leave her house at around 9. And then when the play is over, if those transportation systems are still available at that hour, she wouldn't be home till maybe 9 o'clock at night. So almost a 12-hour day in order to go see a play for a couple hours in New Brunswick versus having funding in her DDD budget, which allows her to call a ride share and get driven down to New Brunswick. Now, it's not unlimited funds, so I don't want you to think, oh, I have this wonderful rich budget of money to take Uber wherever I want. No, there's a certain limit on that. But nevertheless, it enables her to go to the gym. It enables her to go visit friends when she needs a ride share. Um, how does that money get allocated once you have the budget? There are two options, and those options are the third bullet on the screen. You can either work with a support coordinator who will oversee all of the money and work with you on identifying what you envision and what your child envisions as a good life, and work with you in identifying resources that work with the money you have in your annual budget to get the supports, whether it's a day program or whether it's job coaching or whether it's Uber rideshare services you need. And believe it or not, even in the funding, there is money available for tuition for college. So if you're going to take a class at a local community college, some DDD money um, can help to pay, offset those costs. So that NJ-CAT, when you take that test, is really vitally important to answer the questions in, I would say, the most harshest conditions or environment that you could think of that your child could end up in terms of where they might be living. And that would help establish a good basis for the determination of that funding. So I'll pause there and see if there are any questions.
Yes, sorry again.
No,
So,
please.
oh gee, because my son is gonna be 16 December. All this thing that you're talking about, Jesus, I didn't apply for the perform care. So this so in order to be eligible for this funding, I need to be the one to register for the NJK, or he has to be the one to do that.
You can do it on his behalf.
Okay.
You can certainly, yeah, I did it for my daughter. Um, just keep that frame of mind that I suggested to you when you're doing it, because we
Okay.
tend as parents to want to say that our kids are more capable than they necessarily are, and that would impede then the final budget money that you would potentially be eligible for.
So this money is different from the SSI money again, right? The funding is different, totally different from the SSI
Yeah, so
also.
you're gonna get Social Security money as a result of applying for Social Security. That money can be used for what's properly allocated by the state. Typically, it's things like housing,
Food,
food, the
clothing.
basic necessities, some clothing, a little bit of personal expense like movie tickets, but not a lot. Uh, but the most your child can receive from Social Security, if all boxes are checked, right now is somewhere around 900 and I want to say $949 a month
Mm-hmm.
is around the most you could get. And
And
in
also,
many instances, people get less than that.
and also depend on how much the parent is making also too.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, when you talk about independent living, if that money's going to be used for housing expenses, it's not a whole heck of a lot to be allocated in New Jersey, given the expenses. And we'll talk about housing in a minute. But that money, again, the challenge with that money from Social Security, let's just say it's 900 a month, just to make an even number. Keep in mind that if your child exceeds $2,000 a month in any savings account, Social Security has the right and typically will stop giving you Social Security. So you need to make sure that I always tell people no more than $1,500 in an account for your child that's coming through. Make sure you're spending that money on your child's needs,
Mm.
because if it goes over that 2,000 a month, then it could potentially stop. And once that stops, so does Medicare, and so too could your budget from New Jersey. So, look, it's a difficult system to manage because the plausibility, think of your own savings account. Most people would have close to 2,000 or more in their bank accounts anyway. So, how do you manage to keep it that low on a monthly basis? One way is if they're living in your home, you can notify Social Security that you are charging your child for fair market value of the house for a rental of the room that they're living in. So you would just let them know, let's say you want to charge $600 a month rent to your child, but they're living in your house, you can notify them and let them know that they're paying rent. And that can bring down the monthly draw that you're getting from Social Security every month that's going to your child's bank account.
Wow.
So you have to think about that. Same thing with food. You know, if your child's living at home, they're consuming a certain amount of food, they're consuming a certain amount of electricity with their devices, they're consuming a certain amount of water, whatever your public utility bills are. Those are all things you can inform Trenton and Social Security office that you are charging your child for. If they're not living at home, we'll get into that in a minute. But the DDD budget is really a vital tool for helping, and the system sort of split with that funding in New Jersey. If your child has real medical needs because of the condition in which they are in, those budgets tend to be very high because there's an understanding that you're going to need medical supports. It may not be high enough, but it's a lot higher than if your child like mine doesn't need medical supports. And those dollar amounts, if you go on the internet, just Google tier rates for DDD, they'll pop up and you can see what the different tiers would provide, but you won't know which tier you're in until you complete the New Jersey CAT, and the state will let you know. You can't pick and choose which tier you want your child in. Well, the only thing you can do is indicate through the New Jersey CAT where your child's skill sets are and what the needs are. But that budget is key, as I said, to helping your child move along with independent living and employment, because that budget money is going to facilitate many of the things they would need in order to achieve that. So if you go with support coordination, the support coordinator will help manage that budget for you. You will not pay any of the bills. You will not see any of the charges for the bills. They will know, let's say your budget's $40,000 a year. You're going to have your child go to a day program that costs $10,000 of the $40,000 a year. You're going to get them a YMCA membership so they can go to a gym on their own. That may be another 3,000. So they'll manage all of that. You don't need to manage that. And then when the new year starts up again, if you don't use all of your money, it doesn't go away. It just starts all over again with the same dollar amount you had the prior year. So if you only spent 20,000 of your 40,000 and it's now January of the next year, you're going to still have 40,000. It's going to start up all over again. So the idea, though, is that you would try to maximize the dollars, and the support coordinator can assist you with that. If you choose to do self-directing, where you're sort of in control and managing that process on your own, then you would work with the fiduciary intermediary organization and work out the payments of all the scheduling of things, services that you're going to do. So you can do it on your own. I do sort of a hybrid model. I have a support coordinator, but I also do some self-direction. Self-direction is simply, saying to your child, hey, have you thought about this program? I just noticed this program. I think you should go to this program. Then I can let the support coordinator know we found this program. We'd like our daughter to enroll. Support coordinator takes over and helps to pay the bills. So moving on to housing, because independent living, that's a huge piece. Housing and employment. It's really a conversation to the best that you can with your child with a disability to figure out, what do they envision for a good life? What do they see for themselves in terms of wanting where they want to live? That may be in a group home. It may be on their own. It may be living with you for the rest of their lives until you can no longer take care of them. So those are all things that you have to think about, but don't necessarily feel that your child can't live on their own. It's about equipping many of our kids with the skills to be able to feel confident to do that. Now, some people with disabilities may never be able to live on their own based on the disability, but it doesn't mean they can't be in a community resident. where they have supports. Um, or maybe they are living with you or a relative. Should you pass away, that's a personal decision and a conversation with those in your family. But there are lots of different options when it comes to housing. And often we aren't aware of that. So it's about getting familiar with what's available in your state and what um, and who to work with. So in New Jersey, for example, except for Hunterdon County, there are housing authorities in each county. You can reach out to your housing authority and get information about what affordable housing options there may be. This may include Section 8 HUD housing. In Hunterdon, there's a um, lottery system. So they open up the lottery every 5 years. You submit your name and say you're interested in applying for Section 8 housing or a voucher. You get put into a database and they pull the first X number of names. I think it's about 200 names. They'll call you up on the phone. They'll say, hey, your name came up in the lottery. Does your child still want housing? You say yes. They say, okay, you have a voucher. You have, and this is the difficult part, you have about 30 days to find an apartment, which is pretty much nothing because between the shortages of housing availability, particularly designated Section 8 or HUD, or the challenges of just making a match are really difficult. So you start the process, you start connecting with different housing landlords that may have some available homes or rentals, and you try to see if the voucher will meet the requirement of that landlord. If you have the voucher for over a year, that voucher can be transferable to another state. And that's something that you can have a conversation with your local housing office in your town to find out the details about. There's other types of residential housing, and I'm only listed a couple. There are there's just so many different varieties and flavors of this. In South Orange, in Essex County, there's something called Jesby's House. And Jesby's House is a nonprofit, it's an organization that has housing, different levels of housing options for people. They have placements where you can be placed in a apartment complex with full staff to support your child all the way to independent homes that they've purchased where people live on their own. Project Freedom is in Freedom Village is in Robbinsville. And I'll just take you to that site so you can see what that looks like. You can see that they have some very nice apartment complexes. And here it says they're designed specifically to provide housing activities for 46 individuals with a variety of disabilities. It's a 72-unit apartment community, which feature 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. So lots of different options to choose from. It's a question of what's available, how expensive is it, does it work for your child? And part of that too is where is their job? Are they working in close proximity? If they are or aren't, how are they going to get to and from work? So how are they going to get access to all those things that you want for a good life, whether it's a movie theater or whether it's a community center or, um, I don't know, bocce ball or whatever they want to play or do, bowling alleys, are they easily accessible and or do you have a budget that can provide rideshare services or other things to help them get to where they need to be? Oh, let me pause there. Are there any other questions?
So Scott, thank you for this. This is really, really good. And I know um you're tied the two pieces together. So what I'm hearing you say is that, and I think you summarized it, but I just want to reiterate it. In order for us to be able to get the type of supports and services, we need to go back to making sure that the individual is eligible for whether it's SSI, Medicare, and then be able to get DDD services when they're 21 and over in order to be able to get these services paid for. Just want to make sure that people understand that clearly. And then for the parent, I don't know if you touched on this, but where is the role of being able to advocate for them? Because some individuals may not be able to do that paperwork themselves. Yeah, where's the role of, say, guardianship or even supported decision-making process? Can you just comment on that little piece?
Yeah, sure. So guardianship, if you feel that your child will not be able to make decisions for themselves at all, for whatever reasons, then you may wish to pursue guardianship. And guardianship would then mean you would become the advocate for your child. It would eliminate your child from having any obligations around finances, around any decisions for themselves if they're unable to do so, and you would be the sole decision maker for them. My word of caution about guardianship, it can be right for people, and I certainly know people that have done it. Just know that once you do that, it's very hard to undo guardianship. It can be done, but it's a very arduous task. But what that also means is that when it comes to things like voting, which is coming up in November, your child will be unable to vote. So there are certain rights and privileges that all citizens have in the United States that may very well go away and likely will go away if your child is under the auspices of guardianship. Again, it may be appropriate depending upon your circumstances. And if it is, then you should pursue it. Um, but that's a personal decision. But yeah, sometimes we have to be well, not sometimes, often we are the advocates for our kids. But our aim is to hopefully get them to become their own advocates to the degree that they can be, especially if they're going to be living on their own, because things like making doctor's appointments, understanding when the carbon monoxide detector goes off, what that means, how to do their own laundry, how to take care of their personal hygiene. These are all essential things for living on your own. It doesn't mean you can't get people to come to the home and get additional supports or you can't provide them. But part of independent living is really um, some level of sustainability and certainly advocacy for themselves. If, for example, something does go awry in their living situation or even employment, right? I mean, there's lots of cases where people are working. Job coaches will only give so many hours, and depending upon the work situation, uh, our kids are vulnerable to some degree in those environments. And so we can't be there 24/7 watching what's happening. But if they are placed in a situation that they're not sure how to confront or address, um, that can certainly be a little bit disconcerting. And we want to help advocate through their support coordinators, or if you're doing self-direction, that you're aware and have an established relationship with their manager, with their employer, so that when something may come up, uh, it'll be a lot more, um, it'll be less difficult to address. So I know we're running out of time, so I don't want to go too much further with this, and that's always the challenge and pleasure of working on these topics. But I don't know, how much time do we have?
We have a few more minutes, but I think somebody asked a question about what about supported decision making? Because I think that's the alternate to guardianship.
Yeah, so supported decision making, you would have the ability then to really participate in the decision making with your child. So that would be something that you could pursue. Um, but that, so you would have a team of people that would then support you. You would get some folks that you think could help make the decisions. That could be your family members, it could be professionals, it could be potentially people from school. But it still allows the individual to retain their decision-making capacity uh, by ensuring that the people that are providing the supports are people that they feel would be of best interest to them, be their best advocates and supporters. And I see a hand coming up.
Yes, I. So, and that can be undone, right? Compared to guardianship.
which can be undone.
The supported decision making.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Guardianship is really the only one that is a challenge to undo. Should you decide to undo it? Should you realize that it wasn't really what you thought it was, or whether you get your child is showing capability in areas that you hadn't thought they would grow into. You would have to go through the courts. It can be done, but it can be a little bit challenging.
Yeah, because on the guardianship, I tried it. I was actually going to do it on my child, but the doctor told me because of the stage my son in, that he won't be able to do because he can speak on his own. He can make some decision on my behalf. Like it would be very difficult for me. So I think I will go for that supported decision make. I didn't even know about that because I tried to do that. It will be very, even the doctor, his own primary doctor told me that they won't give me the go ahead on doing the guardianship because of uh you know you know because of the way he can be able to speak on it. Because when we go to doctor's appointment, sometimes like the last time we went, the doctor told me to excuse them. I was like, what? He said, yes, that's my patient. I need to talk to him. I said, okay. So that's why I
That's
didn't.
excellent. And
Yeah,
he's 16, is what
it's
you
gonna
said?
be December.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean that's a really critical age, even for all kids, neurotypical or not, right? They're going through a period where, listen, my older son, who I love and adore, even at 16, was challenged in understanding how to make decisions and sort of like knowing how to handle doctor's appointments and things like that. I mean, it's just a natural growth period for kids, and so people with disabilities, it's a little bit extra, but I'm really happy that your doctor did that because a lot of doctors won't necessarily call that out. And so for him to start establishing relationship with the doctor now, if you feel you still want to be in those conversations, you can certainly get a medical proxy. What's called a medical proxy, and that would entitle you to have conversations with the medical staff once they turn 18. That's what I did with my daughter, and I filed that with her Medicare provider so that when there are medical issues, I certainly let her go to the doctor on her own. But if I have concerns or I want to know exactly what's going on, that medical proxy affords my wife and I the opportunity to engage with the medical teams. So something good to have.
Wow, this is good. Thank you so much. Wow.
Yeah. I see a hand up. Is that still up?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't lower my hand. Sorry.
That's okay. You can also get a financial proxy, by the way. So at some point, if your child does become independent with their own funds, you can get like a medical proxy, you can get a financial proxy, and that will allow you to oversee their finances. That's something, again, for our daughter we're doing because she is still challenged with understanding money. And I think it's even harder today, even for neurotypical kids, because everything's done with digital cards, right? You just swipe or you swap, you dab your card on a machine and money's exchanged, but there's no real conscious understanding of what's transpiring. And so when bills come due, or money depletes out of an account and they're getting notifications that there's no more money in their account, they don't understand why, because they just know, oh, I had money, I'm just going to spend it. Or even going to the grocery store and getting money back, but not necessarily knowing that it's correct. Or going to a store and they have 20% off, but not knowing the math. And then they don't realize they were overcharged or undercharged. Those are all things that need somebody to sort of help them with, right? And so that's the piece where the financial proxy comes into assistance. Um, and being well, when you set up the account through Social Security, somebody in your family has to become the payee for the Social Security check. So you will be on the account with your child. So you'll see the funds and have access to those to help them with that money. Um, anyway, was there another question? I thought I heard.
I have a question.
Yep.
But for the financial proxy or the medical proxy, the individual needs to agree to that, right? Or how does
Correct.
that work? Yeah, I thought so.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you would need to see an attorney, and the attorney would write it up, and then that person would have to agree to the terms. Yep.
Okay.
So, okay, thank you. So that's a good. So if the individual is not agreed to that, you can fight it, right?
Not really. No, there's nothing you can do at that point. Um, yeah, if they don't agree to it, it's like a durable power of attorney. Same thing. If all parties involved don't agree, if there's one party that doesn't, there's nothing more you can do. Um, Now, guardianship, you would have control of all that. So that's the alternate path if that's the true need of why you need guardianship. But really, it's typically guardianships for a lot more reasons than that. But
Scott, you just opened a very complicated, and I see Pat, you're shaking your head like, yeah, the complexity of caring for a young adult or an adult who needs support, but who is independent in a way. And so the relationship that you have and the trust that you have is going to be very pivotal, that they're going to trust you to support them, right? That's what they call supported decision making. So that, when the individual is really cannot, and that's why it goes to court, even for guardianship, it's just not automatic. Even if the doctor completed the paperwork on your behalf, and you need two doctors to certify the same thing. They will also get an attorney for that individual as well too, and that attorney has to say that. So just people don't assume that just because you're going to court and you have the papers, is going to the judge will award it, because they're concerned, as Scott mentioned, that you're taking the human rights of that individual away from them, where they cannot make decisions on their own. On the other hand, if you have somebody who is significantly cognitive impaired and they can't make decisions on their own, they may be valuable, because without that, you as a parent don't have any authority to make decisions on their behalf. And you'll be surprised, in certain settings, you will not be able to even look at your chart. You will not be able to get access to their accounts.
yeah.
So this is why it's a very important conversation to have, and more education is necessary. Thank you, Scott, for that. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. You did a fantastic job of really giving you some
And
viewpoint on
and if
this.
I may too, the point about the $2,000 in the savings account for your child with Social Security, I do want to make something else clear that I didn't, and I don't, again, I don't want to get into that now because of time and clarity, but I do want you to be aware that there are other ways to fund your child's financial needs that will not impact that piece of the puzzle. So there's something called the ABLE account. It stands for a Better Life Experience, ABLE, and you can put up to $100,000 in that account tax free, and it will not impact Social Security dollars. There's also something called special needs trusts that you can work through an attorney and put together. That too is something that will not impact Social Security. So those are two financial vehicles that you can explore on your own and utilize. And I've utilized both to put money away for your child that will not impact their ability to get Social Security. Now, there are other implications with the special needs trust. So I don't want to say it's the best thing in the world, but they are mechanisms and vehicles to build financial supports beyond what the Social Security mechanism does, especially if your child's not able to work or isn't working for a long period of time to acquire some assets. So just know that there are other tools available for you to do that, should you be interested.
So thank you, Scott, for that. That was really excellent. Some key takeaways. At what age should parents be starting to think about all some of the things you've talked about? Um,
I would say certainly by age 12, because by 14, you're going to want them to enroll in CSOC in New Jersey, the Child System of Care. Um, it's always better to be earlier than later. So you can always get back in, you can always join CSOC after 14, but best to be ready before 14. So you have everything ready. And I'll be honest with my journey, and Dr. G may share as well. This took a lot from me as a parent. I'm a working parent. I feel well educated. I have a great family. I have great support. I'm in a very unique position in that way. And yet it took me many times going to programs like this that I'm doing now for parents before I got it and I understood it. I probably went to 6 or 7 meetings on the same topic before things sunk in. So there's a lot of acronyms, there's a lot of things to know. I always say it's like eating an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You can't do it all. We all have different stresses in our lives, our personal lives. However, you have to stay with it because as you go through the journey, you're going to pick up pieces. Sometimes you may hear conflicting things and you need to get further clarity. So just hang in there. We've all gone through it at different levels and different needs, but you just have to stick with it and slow and steady. But if you start at age 12 and you start lining yourself for CSOC, and then once you're in perform care, around the time they're getting ready to graduate high school, maybe even at 16, you can start um, looking at the route to going through the process for Social Security and DDD services, because you won't be able to apply for Social Security till 18, but you shouldn't wait till they're 18 to start the process. You want to start it ahead of time. So when they turn 18, in the event um, you have to reapply that you're denied the first time, you want to give yourself enough of a time buffer to go through that process and resubmit an application. Then at 21, if you're going to stay in the public school system till 21, you want to be ready for DDD services, probably apply at 18, and then slow, steady, all the steps so that by your time they're 21, DDD will be in place. The financial piece will be in place.
Wow, that's excellent. Pat was asking if we can get today's PowerPoint. Absolutely. Pat, we also have this recorded on Facebook, so you can certainly definitely watch it back again because there's some commentaries that he made while he was talking that you may not see it on the PowerPoint necessarily. So you're right. This is a lot to process. I see, and I knew I had that same level of anxiety around 17 when I started to like, okay, let me start planning. But what I think if one takeaway somebody wants to do with maybe your child is 18, your child is 16, I think address the SSI with the $2,000 level. I think we don't know what the tomorrow holds, and parents want their children to go to college. Great. It doesn't mean that your child can't get support and services from DDD. What you want to do is you don't want to limit the opportunity to do so because you're thinking that they are going to do college and they don't need all the support. It's like insurance, have it in place. If you don't need it, fine, you don't have to use it. But at least make sure you are eligible and you're able to get it, right? So the key takeaway is making sure that, monies that are given to the child, open an ABLE account. It can be with any, financial institution. Is a perfect place to, save money. And then that way it doesn't affect your Social Security. For some of us who, thankfully, because I did the box center training, I learned the value of having SSI and Medicare. A lot of us who are, maybe middle class, you're thinking, oh, I have insurance. I don't need Medicare, Medicaid, SSI. You think that's really, something for the poor. But this is really intended for services that you're just describing, the supports and services that we need. So I think that's the part that when that light bulb went off for me, I was like, oh, okay, so that's why I need it. So I just want to emphasize that. So it doesn't matter how much, unless you are a billionaire that you just think, okay, I will be the one funding the rest of the world. This is something that your child may need the support for. And that's inclusive even in public education, really. So I just want to encourage all of us, as you've heard Scott, and this is an amazing work you've done. Thank you so much for a
Thank you
really
for having me.
wonderful presentation. You have a very lived experience that I think people can benefit from. And, you and I both know that the important thing is people to continue to be educated and become advocates. So we want to encourage you, if you're part of New Jersey, we definitely want you to be educated. if you want to talk about, the regional planning councils for a minute, Scott, and let them know.
Sure. Back in the 70s, the Division of Department Developmental Disabilities was looking for a way to get more parent engagement voice. And by the 1990s, they came up with what are called the Regional Family Planning Council, which is a group of individuals like ourselves, parents, to have a voice and connection to all of the New Jersey services that are offered and have influence on the decision-making process in the state at legislative levels. So the council's broken up into 10 councils in the state of New Jersey, and they are based upon the county you live in. So if you just Google Regional Family Planning Council, you can locate the county that you're in and see which council number you're part of. And then you can contact the name and email that's associated with that council number on the website and participate in their meetings. Find out when they meet, where they meet, how often. And it's just a group of people like ourselves that are interested in leveraging each other's knowledge. So we're not doing this alone and also have our own support network of people. I never would have met Dr. G had it not been part of that. So amazing things happen when you go to these sessions and you meet people. They're held in their regional areas, and then they also have a statewide meeting about 4 times a year that are held. Sometimes they're held down in Hamilton, New Jersey, which has been identified as the central spot for all counties in the state of New Jersey. Sometimes they've been up in North Jersey, but they're great places to meet people like ourselves and connect with other service people, service organizations, as well as meeting people from the state of New Jersey who can help you just build a network. Had I not participated in those things, I would not know what I know today. I would not have the Rolodex or contact list that I have today to reach out to people when I need services for my own child. So anything you can do to build your own advocacy and network is always a powerful thing. So I encourage everybody to participate or at least explore it and see if it's a good fit for you.
Wow, that's excellent, Scott. This has really been an amazing, informative service. Truly, truly, truly. So you guys know why he's one of my favorites. And we definitely will have you back again. I want to use that as opportunity to kind of highlight that we do our ask the expert topics. And if there's a particular area or topic that you really want to know more about, and you say, you know what, I'm so confused, I need information. Like she just said, sometimes we have to repeat it several times in different ways. Please let us know, because I'm always looking for what topic that I think may be pertinent. And I think this is an area that it needs a lot of education for a lot of people. So we'll welcome that. Next month, I'm going to have my one other favorite person, Hillary Freeman, will be coming back. And she's going to be talking to us about IEPs and 504 plans. I think that, once again, you bring in people who are really passionate, who are also family members, and she has a brother with special needs. So oftentimes that makes it even the core of what we need to talk about. And then we have our gala coming up. If you're in Jersey, it's November 16th. It's our 16th year. For some of the families, we will have some sponsors. And then if you're there and you're listening and you feel like, you know what, I want to support this organization and give a family a night out, please consider sponsoring a family or two to attend the event. Saturday, November 16th at the Pines Manor in Edison. You can go on our website, mygoalinc.org/events. We'll love for you to be a part of that event. And like I said, if you're a family and you want to attend but don't have the means to, do reach out to us at info@mygoalinc.org, info@mygoalinc.org. Our vision is to really make sure that you have a great time. This year, we're going to have the MJ Expression team coming back. They are amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. You don't want to miss it. We're also going to have DJ Nick, who is also an individual, neurodivergent individual, amazing DJ. He's going to have a great time with us. So you don't want to miss out. Come out Saturday, November 16th at the Pines Manor. So once again, Scott, thank you. I look forward to seeing you. Scott is going to be our MC. So I'm just going to put it out there. You see how brilliant he is? He's also very funny too. So, so on that note, we want to say thank you everybody for being here, and see you next month. And when we do our Ask the Expert topic, is going to be actually November. Let me just quickly make sure, November 10th, Sunday, November 10th, same time. Join us, and we want to just make sure that you are well informed and educated, and above all, you're the best advocate for your loved one. So thank you, everybody. Thanks again, Scott. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, thank you.